Simon Baron Cohen. Simon Bar Cohen? He's Borat's brother, by the way, just so you know. What he showed is that you might think that the classical human body type is female. So in some sense, every creature, human creature, starts out with a prototypically female body structure. And even though there's chromosomal differences between the two sexes. And what happens is that masculinization occurs as a consequence of fetal testosterone. And there's a lot of variation in fetal testosterone from male fetus to male fetus. And some of Cohen's work has demonstrated quite clearly that fetal testosterone levels are very much associated with post-birth masculine behaviors. And one of the things he's found out, for example, he believes that autism is hypermasculinity. Because he's found that the fetal boys who are hyper-masculinized are much more likely to become autistic. And one of the things that's interesting about autistic kids, there are autistic females as well, by the way, but most of them are male, is that the most fundamental lack they seem to have is the lack of ability to engage in any sort of social contact whatsoever. So they don't make eye contact. And boys, by the way, boy babies make less eye contact than girl babies. The autistic kids, they don't make hardly any eye contact at all, and they have a very difficult time establishing any kind of social relationship. Now, this study is kind of interesting. So it was published in, I think it was 2012. Let me read it to you. Previous research has shown that prenatal exposure to endocrine-disrupting chemicals can alter children's neurodevelopment, including sex-typed behavior, and that it can do so in different ways in males and females. Non-chemical exposure, including psychosocial stress, may disrupt the prenatal hormonal milieu as well. To date, only one published study has prospectively, that means over time, examined the relationship between exposure to prenatal stress and gender-specific play behavior during childhood, finding masculinized play behavior in girls who experienced high prenatal life event stress, but no associations in boys. Here we examine this question in a second prospective cohort from the Study for Future Families. Pregnant women completed questionnaires on stressful events, life events during pregnancy. And those who reported one or more events were considered stressed. Families were recontacted several years later. The mean age of their children was 5 years, and mothers completed a questionnaire including the validated preschool activities inventory, which measures sexually dimorphic play behavior. In sex stratified analysis, after adjusting for child's age, parental attitudes towards gender atypical play, age and sex of siblings, and other relevant covariates, girls exposed to prenatal life event stress had higher scores on the PSAI masculine subscale and showed a trend towards higher or more masculine composite scores. By contrast, in males, there was a trend towards an association between prenatal stress and higher PSAI feminine subscale scores, but no association with masculine or composite scores. These data confirm previous findings in human and animal models suggesting that prenatal stress is a non-chemical endocrine disruptor that may have androgenic effects on female fetuses and anti-androgenic effects on male fetuses. Androgenic being male hormone affected. This is Simon Baron Cohen, a direct study. One of the tests, hypothetically, that you can use to assess empathy, although it turns out to be rather difficult to do that reliably, is to use what's called the mind in the eyes test. And basically, with that test, what you do is you show subjects just a slice of a photograph of eyes. The person in the photograph had been manifesting some display of emotion. And some emotional displays are associated with change in eyes. So, for example, a Duchenne smile, which is a true smile, also involves lifting of the eyes at the edges, whereas just like a fake social smile is just the mouth. So you can read a smile from the eyes. Now, you can't read that as well as you could if you had the whole face. You can read anger from the eyes because the eyebrows, you know, it includes the eyebrows. The eyebrows go down, and you can read surprise. But it's kind of attenuated because you don't have the whole face. And so hypothetically, people who are more attuned to social cues can do a better job of reading the mind in the eyes. So these researchers looked at children for whom fetal testosterone data was available and then determined at, how old were they? I don't remember. Doesn't matter. They had data on fetal testosterone obviously from before birth, and then at some point in their child development they were given this test. Empathy involves an understanding of what others are thinking and feeling and enables us to interact in the social world. According to the empathizing systematizing theory, now here's the theory. The theory is that women are tilted towards empathizing and males are tilted towards systematizing. And that seems to fall into alignment with other observations suggesting that the biggest gender difference between adult humans is interest preference. Women are much more likely to express interest in occupations that involve a lot of social contact, whereas men are more likely to manifest interest in occupations that have to do with things. And so one example of that, you see this in the Scandinavian countries, despite the fact that they've really done everything possible to flatten out the environmental differences between opportunities for boys and for girls, is that in the Scandinavian countries, the ratio of male nurses to female nurses is 1 to 20. And of female engineers to male engineers is 1 to 20. And the governments now and then do a big push to try to get more men into nursing and more women into engineering, and with a lot of push and a lot of advertising and marketing and so forth, they can shift the proportions to some minor degree, but as soon as they stop pushing hard, they just snap back to 1 in 20. It's really interesting, if you think about it, that the biggest gender differences that are reported in the world are reported between men and women in Scandinavian societies, because those are the most gender equal societies in the world. And so one of the perverse things that has happened is that, you can imagine that there's some reason that men and women are different is because of environmental variability, right? The environment for the women and the environment for the men is different. And then some proportion is due to genetic variability. And so then one idea, which is false, is that if you eradicated the environmental variability, the gender differences would disappear. That would only be the case if all the gender differences were due to environmental variability. What happens instead is that when you eliminate the environmental variability, you maximize the genetic variability. And the reason you do that is because that's all that's left. Right? You've eradicated the other source of variability, so the only thing left is genetic variability. And the consequence of that is that men and women differ more in Scandinavia than they do in any other place on the planet. Now, to me, that seems like the death knell of social construction theories, because it's exactly the opposite of what would have been predicted. Precisely the opposite. You know, and maybe it would have been a good thing if flattening out the opportunity landscape would have eradicated gender differences in personality and preference and so forth, but it isn't self-evident that that's a good thing, because you could also say that an egalitarian society, optimally constructed, is one in which the differences between people are allowed to manifest themselves so that each person is able to find a place and a niche in the society that actually fits their temperament. Empathy involves an understanding of what others are thinking and feeling and enables us to interact in the social world. According to the empathizing systemizing theory, now part of the systemizing theory as well is that one of the things about autistic people is that they systematize like mad. You know, so to the degree that their cognitive abilities are intact, which is extraordinarily variable, it's more often the case that if an autistic child focuses on something, they do it obsessively. And what they do is classify and systematize to a degree that looks unidimensional unidimensional and fundamentally focused. According to the empathizing systemizing theory, females on average have a stronger drive to empathize than males. This sex difference may in part reflect developmental differences in brain structure and function, which are themselves under the influence of fetal testosterone. Previous studies have found that fetal testosterone is inversely backwards, correlated with social behaviors such as eye contact in infancy, peer relationships in preschoolers, and mentalistic interpretation of animate motion. Male fetuses are exposed to higher levels of testosterone than our female fetuses. The present study investigates empathizing in children as a function of amniotic measures of fetal testosterone. 193 mothers of children, 100 males, 93 females, aged 6 to 8 years of age, completed children's versions of the empathy quotient, which is a questionnaire, I believe, and children themselves were tested on reading the mind in the eyes task. All mothers had had amniocentesis during the second trimester of pregnancy. There was a significant negative correlation between fetal testosterone and scores on both measures. While empathy may be influenced by postnatal experience, the results suggest that prenatal biology also plays an important role mediated by androgen effects in the brain. These results also have implication for the causes of disabilities involving empathy, such as autism spectrum conditions, and may explain the increased rate of such conditions among males.